Constantino.
¿Qué huele?
Pound for pound.
Little Giant Boxing.
We're here with the co-creator of the Contender,
Yes.
Jeff Wald. Talk to us. How did you get that inspiration to actually, make that show?
Because there was nobody who emerged on the scene after Oscar.
Right.
In terms of how do you build a famous fighter. ESPN was putting guys on Friday nights. You never knew if you'd see him again. You knew nothing about him. So there's no rooting interest. You build up fandom when you root for somebody. And you root for somebody if you know their story, what their background is, good, bad, and whatever. And especially in boxing. So I decided to do what the Olympics does, which is do backstories of the fighters.
Tell us about some of your fighters that you have, for those who don't know.
Over the years, Sakio Bika is one of my favorite. There's a documentary that's finished called Le Champion in French, because he's from Cameroon where they speak French. I'm in the documentary, and Sakio Bika, I remember after the Calzaghe fight, because he really went 12 tough rounds when Calzaghe was undefeated.
Right.
And I said to Joe afterwards, why don't we do this again? He said, are you out of your... Can I curse on this thing? Or
Of course, absolutely.
Oh,
please.
He said, are you out of your fucking mind? I never want to get hit by that guy again. And then Andre Ward hosted this last season for us of the Contender. And I said to Andre, why didn't you want to fight Riku again? It was a great fight. He won 12 rounds with you. He said, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. He said, this guy really hurt me. He said, I was in pain for like a week after that fight. Why would I be stupid enough to fight him again? So basically, that was my problem. He went through all the top tier of guys. He didn't win them until the end. He finally, I forget who he beat. I think he beat the German guy for the belt. Forgot his name now.
Arthur Abraham?
No, not that guy. There's a 168. I just saw the documentary too. They showed the documentary at the Pan-African Film Festival in Baldwin Hills this past week.
Okay.
Talk
about some of the other fighters that you have. You obviously have a pool of talented fighters.
We keep very few. I mean, there are guys who, Gomez was always one of my favorites. He was the little engine that could. Do you know what I mean? A little scrappy guy who everybody underestimated, but went in there and never punked out. I mean, I knew Cotto would beat him, so did he. But he went toe-to-toe with him for 8 rounds.
Right.
He never punked,
Tell us one of your memorable memories that you have from the Contender show that really stood out to you that said, all right, this show is something special.
Just from the beginning, the choices we had, they all had such great stories. And then one of the things I'm proud of, I just saw the Sakio, the documentary. Sakio made a lot of money with us. I mean, a lot of money, okay? For a guy, Cameroon is one of the poorest countries in the world. He grew up, no running water, no electricity, dirt floor, no real floor. I mean, just, that's what that is.
Yeah.
And he's taken some of that money and he's gone around the country as a national hero, and he's built these beautiful gyms for these kids. I mean, first-class gyms all around Cameroon.
Right.
And for these kids to box. And also, when you see somebody who comes from where you come from that looks like you, and that succeeds, it's an incentive that, hey, I can do that. You know what I mean? My role model when I was a kid was fucking the mafia. I grew up in the Bronx. Okay. You know what I mean? But they all had Cadillacs and shit. Right. You know what I mean? They had tans in the winter because they went to Florida.
So you were around the time when the mafia was around boxing, right?
I love my father died when I was 8. My grandfather was a boxing fan. So when I was 9, he took me to downtown to Stillman's gym to see Sugar Ray Robinson jump rope.
Wow, beautiful.
And I was hooked. Okay, I'm 76.
So you saw Sugar Ray Robinson.
Oh yeah, and also in those days there was the Gillette Cavalcade of Sports on Friday nights was boxing. So I saw Basilio and Fulmer, some of the great fights, Archie Moore, Floyd Patterson, Johansson, Rocky Marciano.
Wow.
I mean, so I grew up loving boxing. With my neighborhood, when Marciano fought, especially if it was the springtime or the summer, you could hear the fight in the street. You didn't even know your radio because it was coming through everybody's windows and stuff. You know what I mean? So I grew up in boxing, and then when I started to make money, the first time that I could buy really good seats in a fight was Ali Frazier won and I bought ringside.
Wow, you were there.
I was there, and
What do you remember? That's beautiful.
I'll tell you what I remember. First of all, my ringside was like row 30. Okay, but in the front, Sinatra was the official photographer for that fight.
I remember that.
Burt Lancaster was one of the guys. He went to my high school, Burt Lancaster. He was one of the guys who was doing the color. And, Elizabeth Taylor was there. All these huge movie stars were there.
A-listers.
But the guy who made the most noise when he walked in the arena was Nicky Barnes. Yeah. Nicky Barnes was wearing a chinchilla coat, came in with 3 women with skirts this big, gorgeous, drop-dead women with the pimp cups, the whole deal. Wow. When he walked in, he said, everybody turned around. It was Nicky Barnes.
Wow.
He was a star, so it was like, so I went to the Rumble in the Jungle and rooting for Ali. I did a Broadway show with Muhammad Ali in 1969. It was a disaster. It's called Big Time Buck White. Opened and closed in 6 days. Wow. I did it because I want to put money in his pocket because of stand on Vietnam. I was against the Vietnam War too. But I didn't make the sacrifice he did.
Going back to the Ali fight, what else do you remember about watching them? 30th row, it's pretty close to be.
And I went to the Thriller in Manila also, on that stadium. So I was friends with Ali right up until the end, basically. And what was funny is I can't remember the year, but during the Gulf War, George Bush Sr. honored Ali and I at the same luncheon, not for supporting the war, but for supporting the troops. Because both of us felt bad that the Vietnam troops got no love. They're still out in the street. I gave one of them today on the way down here, a couple of dollars. So the troops deserve love. It's the idiots who send them there that don't deserve love. But the Gulf War was a smart war, if there was such a thing. It was 20 days over and out. We didn't get stuck in there or anything, But so Muhammad Ali was so unique. Our first press conference when we were doing the Broadway show, I'm standing there with him and everything, and I was the only white guy, I guess. Or there was 2 others, actually. And somebody said to Ali, "I thought you don't like white people. What's the story with you white people?" He said, "No, I don't have a problem." He said, "But when you're in a room full of snakes, you don't stop to see which ones don't bite."
Wow.
He was so sharp, always had a good retort, a good answer, a good thing to say. And so that was a privilege to know him. And then what happened is George Foreman, I was at the fight when he beat Michael Moore for his belt. And so I don't remember even the guy who I was with, but it was a friend of mine. And I said, "George wore those shorts in Zaire at the Rumble in the Jungle." The guy said, "No, maybe the same color, you're full of shit. George did not wear those shorts." I said, 20-something years later. I said he wore those shorts. So when I got home, the next day I called Henry Holmes, who's George's lawyer, who had handled a case for me, and I'm a friend of mine. And I said, "Let me just ask you a crazy question. The shorts George wore the other night when he beat Michael Moore, were those the shorts he wore in Zaire?" And he said, "Yeah, how did you know?" I said, "I was in Zaire." Okay. So I said to him in passing, "Look, if you guys ever need anything that I can help you with, call me,
Right. That's great.
Whatever. And by the way, they knew. I mean, I told them straight out. If you tell George the same thing, I was rooting for Ali in that fight. Ali Bumbaya, Ali kill him.
Yeah.
And so, what happened is about a year later. Hey man, my daughter Sarah. A year later, I get a phone call from Henry. George would like to meet with you and have lunch, the 3 of us. And we had lunch, and they said they were having trouble. They're in a dispute with HBO. HBO wouldn't give him a fight because he was in a dispute with Main Events. George was, and they were taking Main Events' side. And George was the most popular fighter then on the network because Tyson already left to go to Showtime. And so I thought that was outrageous. So I went to my friend Irving Azoff, and I told him what was happening. So the 2 of us called Gerald Levin, who was the chairman, the CEO of Time Warner, and said, "This is stupid. Why would HBO do it?" We said we'd indemnify HBO against any lawsuit, whatever. And so he called up Seth Abraham, who was president of sports then, and Lou DiBella, who was head of boxing, and said, "You're to meet with Jeff Wald and Irving Azoff." So Irving and I formed a company, A&W, and we used the A&W Rupia logo. So we were too cheap to do our own logo, so we used the Rupia logo. It was Azoff and Wald. And so it was a very contentious meeting.
Right.
You know, there was a guy in there called Mazursky who had a little piece of whatever the action was with George. George didn't like him, didn't trust him. So I said, I don't want to have this meeting. There was a whole bunch of us, lawyers and everybody. Their main events was there, and I don't want to have this meeting if this guy's in the room. And that guy stood up and he said, I'm a good guy. I'm not a criminal. He said, I just got custody of my kids. And I said, so did OJ. That sort of put a crimp in the meeting for a little while. Everybody got crazy. Good.
Going back to that first fight with Ali Frazier, where all the superstars were there, what else do you remember about that memory and being there?
Just the atmosphere.
How did it feel?
It was, at first, the fuck is this? Sorry. Hello?